Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we are working on the last section in this unit. It is, I believe, Unit 8, Section 6, so it should say 8.6 at the top of your note sheet. Let's see, so relative frequencies. If you remember, frequency is the number of times that something occurred, and we already looked at two-way tables to see that we could organize our data and answer questions about that information. So really the only thing new here is the fact that relative frequency is going to tell us how many times something occurs, but you're comparing it to the total. So it's a lot like probability that you may have worked on last year. So there's a little formula. It's a really easy ratio, technically, to figure out relative frequency. You take the number of times it happens, the frequency, and you just divide by the total. We typically don't leave our answer in ratio form. We typically convert it to a percent. So remember, if you have a fraction, you divide it out, because this really means we're dividing. You divide the top by the bottom. That'll give you a decimal. And then from the decimal, you need to only multiply by 100. The shortcut is to move the decimal point over 2 places, so you don't have to do it on your calculator if you don't want to. So again, frequencies in two-way tables we've already talked about. This is the new thing today that is coming up with the relative frequency, in other words, the percent of something happening. So down here, you already know how to come up with your totals in a two-way table by simply adding the totals across each column and down each row, or I guess these are your columns, and your rows are across. So I get 100 for my total down here. I get 55 for my total here, and I get 45 for my total here. And again, another way to check is if this adds up to 100, then the bottom row has to add up to 100. And it does. So our first question says, of the people surveyed, what's the relative frequency of people who floss regularly? So if you go to floss regularly, we're not worried about the gym membership at all. We're looking for the total amount of people who floss regularly, which is 32. And guys, what we're doing right now is we're setting up the ratio of people who floss regularly, and we're comparing it to the total. Remember, we have a total of 100 people in this. And the nice thing about having a total of 100, when you take 32 and divide by 100, you actually get 0.32. This is just another way to write 32 hundredths, but in decimal form. So it converts very easily, and then again, as you move it over 2 places, in other words, multiply by 100 to turn it into a percent, you get 32%. So 32% of the people surveyed said they floss regularly. Now, if you look at your other note sheet, I just copied the table down right here for us so we could refer back to it easier. You're going to have it in front of you. This question goes along with the same table. So it says, of the people who own a gym membership, what is the relative frequency of people who floss regularly? So guys, this time we are only paying attention to the people that were in this column here for gym membership. So our total, when we write our ratio, our total this time is only 45. And because we're looking at people who floss regularly, we're looking at a frequency of 21 out of 45. And because this one is not out of 100, we are going to have to divide it out. So on your calculator, you're typing in 21 divided by 45. That gives you approximately 0.4666, and this goes all the way across your screen until finally there's a 7. Remember, it just rounds up because it ran out of room. So again, converting this to a percent, it's going to become 46.6 repeating percent. So not quite half of the people who own a gym membership say they floss regularly. Okay, so now we're looking at the people who do not own a gym membership. So under gym membership, we're looking at a total of 55 people who do not. And they want to know the relative frequency of people who floss regularly. So that would be our 11 people in this column that have who do floss regularly but do not own a gym membership. You can see this is a smaller chunk. 11 out of 55 is exactly 0.2. And then when you convert that to a percent, it does come 20%. So, a lot of times after you do some calculations with a problem like this, they want us to really think about whether there seems to be a relationship between these two factors that we've looked at. According to the people who own a gym membership and who don't, we have what looks to be a much higher percentage of people who floss regularly, and obviously we can kind of assume that maybe those people take better care of themselves in general. So to answer the question, does there seem to be a relationship? I would say yes. It seems that more than twice as many people who own a gym membership floss regularly. And again, you can have a lot of different things that you can talk about, but in general, it does show that way more people floss when they have a gym membership. Now, on the inside of this little foldable note sheet, we should see that we have a table that looks like this. And I'm just going to clean this up for a second because I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves as we're going through this. So, as you can see, it's another one of the 2A tables that's partially filled in for us. And remember that when you have a table like this, you can kind of work backwards. I mean, this is easy to fill out because it's just 41 plus 87. I think then you would have to go to this column because we have a total of 70. So we can subtract our 49 to get this number. And then I think we have to work over here. These two things can add up to the 220. And then you can work backwards to get your 150. And then finally work backwards to get your 63. So if you agree with all those numbers, we'll start taking a look at, of the people surveyed, what is the percent that received a speeding ticket. So we're not worried about the two different categories right now. We're only worried about the total number of people. So the bottom of our ratio is going to be 220 this time. And the one category they want us to look at is speeding tickets. So according to this, the people that had speeding tickets, there were 128. So again, we want to convert that ratio, 128 divided by 220. And we get this decimal, approximately 0.5818, and it looks like that 18 keeps repeating. So when converting it, you get 58.18 repeating percent, if we want to be exact. If we want to estimate, obviously it's pretty close to 58%, and for most questions, you're okay estimating. This one's a little more specific. This one talks about both variables. The fact that some people drive red vehicles, so it says of the people who drive red vehicles, right now we know there are 70 people who drive red vehicles, so we're only looking at these people. In that category, the ones that received a speeding ticket would be 41. Okay, so this ratio is very different from this one. This one's only going to have a total of 70. Because those are the amount of people that drove the red vehicles, and the speeding ticket was 41. So this time, 41 out of 70 is about 0.58 again. This time we have 0.5857, and it doesn't seem to be any repeats. So I'm going to just estimate this one is 58%. It's really going to be 59%, I guess, if I'm going to round it. So, continuing on with this set of questions, there we go. It talks about, and again, let me clean this up for us so we don't have this in our way. It talks about those who do not drive the red vehicle. So now we're going to go back to our table. Okay, they don't drive a red vehicle, they drive a different color, so we need the 150, which is our total. And let's see, what percent have gotten a speeding ticket with the red or the non-red vehicle? So again, 150 is how many people did not have a red vehicle, and the people that did get a speeding ticket up here is the 87. So again, we're converting 87 out of 150 this time. We get exactly 58% this time. Alright, and then just to go back and review, when they ask for the frequency, they're just asking for the plain old number who have not received a speeding ticket. So in this category, the total number of people who have not is 92. And then we're writing ratio. What's the relative frequency of people who have not gotten a speeding ticket? So we already said there's 92 people who have not, but we need to go back and double check. There's a total of 220 people in the whole experiment. So we need to do 92 out of 220. This time we get the decimal point 4181, and this time the 81 repeats. So we're going to estimate, well, we don't have to estimate with this one. We can give it an exact value, 41.81%. And then I just wanted us to make sure we remember the definition. Relative frequency is a ratio comparing frequency to the total. Frequency is simply just the number in that category that we're looking at. So again, two-way tables, they let us look at two different variables and see if there's some kind of relationship. And when you calculate relative frequency, it allows you to look at some things that are very similar. For example, people who drive red vehicles and people who don't drive red vehicles, it looks to be we have about the same percentage of speeding tickets whether they drive a red vehicle or not. And I think that will do it with our notes on Unit 8. Make sure you tape this into your notebook, please. I believe the page numbers are 96 and 95 actually. So to get these in the right place, we do have page 95 and 96 for our notebook.